I'm very, very happy to be here today for this event, and the Willamette Falls kind of holds a special place in my heart. Just for I'll get to in a little bit, and also I'm going to start out with actually not talking about the falls, but talking about the fact that we just enjoyed a lunch, and I've been thinking about what we just ate, of like where it came from. And if you probably, I mean, if you try to think about it, like you would have no idea where any of the ingredients came from that we ate. And so a lot of times when I give these type of presentations, I focus really actually on our connection to the land is told through food, and which is kind of like our most intimate connection to a place is from the food that the land there provides. And so, I mean, just like the tribes, and actually, you know, traditional cultures all over the planet, that the culture is really defined by these foods that are found in this area. And for the tribes in the Columbia Basin, particularly in the plateau tribes, we have what's called the first foods, with salmon and deer, game, the camas, and other roots, and the huckleberries are like the four of the first foods, with water in the center being kind of everything's dependent on that, including, you know, it's just all life. And I think salmon in this area is just like always gets the focus, because I mean, it was just the cultures here were so defined by the salmon, by the trade opportunities, the nutrients involved. In fact, the tribes that are members of our commission, I mean, it even it impacted our religion, all our trade, our economies, our diets, and so a lot of just the act of harvesting them was really defined a lot of our travels and our culture. And waterfalls, like, you know, earlier we talked about this is Solano Falls on the Columbia, and this, you know, on a bigger scale, would have been what you would have seen here with the scaffolds. In fact, in the first presentation, you could see some in the sketches there were scaffold fishing, but just the nature of the waterfall with the salmon kind of pooling below the falls, and kind of attracted a lot of an easier to catch situation. So it attracted a lot of trade and attention from the tribes. Here you can see a close-up of the scaffolds that were being built out over these rivers to catch, over the falls to catch these salmon. And this is actually real cool. Let me see if we can get it to start. There it goes. Some footage from probably color photography was invented in like 1954, 55. And so this would have been kind of like the last video, right before the falls was drowned. But you'd see these fishers that were standing out over these scaffolds, over this roar of the water, and kind of like this whole multi-sensory experience of being out there. I mean, we hear stories from elders that talk about how it was so many senses. You'd have the roar, like up to a mile away, you would start to hear the roar of the falls. You would already get the smell, like that river, algae, mossy smell, just like infusing the air. Kind of the excitement of knowing that there's going to be all these people down there, and you're going to meet people from other tribes and whatnot, and how it like impacted all of those senses. Yeah, so here's another scaffold, but at Solano Falls. But take a close look at this photo, and particularly in the lower left-hand side. That actually is kind of like the dovetail into Willamette Falls, because there were millions of lamprey that would return to the Columbia Basin each year, and along with the salmon. In fact, I'm Nez Perce, I grew up in Idaho, and there's a town near where I live called Asotin, which is based on Nez Perce word for lamprey. and we don't have any, there hasn't been any lamprey there for years. And how, as time has gone by, this kind of like this resource has gotten more and more diminished. And it's not like it has like the sexy factor of the salmon. But here you can see, this is a famous photo of a Yakima boy harvesting lamprey at Solano Falls, and some traditional stick roasting of salmon. But it was really this important part of the culture, and that which kind of makes Willamette Falls very, very important now, because with all the hydro system, which is not designed for lamprey, the last major fishery for the Columbia Basin is right here at Willamette Falls, because there's no dams between here and the ocean. And so there's still a pretty robust run, and tribes from all over the area will travel here for those. Let's go here. So these are just a couple of photos that I was gathering for a different presentation, but that shows these tribal photos. So we saw this photo earlier with the scaffold, which was very similar to what you would have seen at Solano Falls. And here you can also see here's the scaffold fisher. This was one of the first sketches from the Willamette Valley, opening up from a collection from Henley War. And here it's like, it was what struck me finding these old photos or these old sketches were how there were so many. Whoops, wrong one. Tribes are always included in all these early sketches because they were still here so intimately, because the falls still always had its draw. Here you can see a little camp here on the other side of the river in 1846. Here, just a few years later, with the town site was as it was continuing to grow. And you can still, the artists thought we would have included more tribe representation there as well. But then within just a few years, I mean, it was really, what was that last one? It was in 1850. So this was just 40 years later that it was, you can't. That connection's been severed. It's like completely, industry encroached so much that leaving it kind of very separated from people's experience. And it's like it's like all of these last ones, you don't see any tribal members anymore in these photos, because more of the focus was on the industry. But still, throughout all that time, despite all that industry, the lamprey were still becoming strong. This is a sketch from 1907 that still documented a big salmon run, or a lamprey run. And even in 1913, it was just like seas of lamprey that would come out. And so because of that, and the fact that they continued here, and they hadn't in a lot of the other places throughout the basin, that it allowed the tribes that had the treaty fishing right to harvest lamprey here to continue that. In fact, their tribes, my tribe at Nez Perce, they will travel all the way from Idaho to come and harvest lamprey here, because it's it's a place where it can happen. So it's like here's me getting to do it, although I'm not to claim that I'm a fisherman. So, but yeah, it's funny though when I tell people about lamprey harvest and how they're like, why do you say that instead of fishing? And I was like, well, if you've actually been down there, that it's really, you're just like picking them off the rocks. So, and it's such it makes me kind of sad of being. I'm like, what a gift it is to be able to partake in the harvest. Because when we're down there and we take the boat and dock and we're standing like underneath the waterfall, I just think how few people in the area ever get to experience the waterfall from that vantage, and to like hear that roar, and we're just like kind of communicating with hand signals or shouting because it's just so loud down there. And it kind of reminds me in a small way of some of those Solano Falls stories. So, which then brings me to like why my kind of as a special place in my heart is this is a photo of my dad who, when he's alive, his kind of like dying years were spent on lamprey restoration in the Columbia Basin. And part of the project for that was that lamprey, unlike salmon that navigate back to where they were born, lamprey go back to where they can smell young. And so the tribes have programs where they'll capture returning lamprey and then outplant them, and then hold them over the winter until they're ready to spawn, and then put them into streams where they would like them to return, where they've been extirpated. And so then because they're ready to spawn, they just spawn right there. And then now in the 5-10 years we've been doing this, where there's young in the rivers, the lamprey are able to like smell new streams. And this area is one of the sources where they're able to like get these lamprey that are still abundant, and to be able to transport them into upper reaches to be able to like kind of reestablish the species. So that's why he was always, the only time I got to see him during the year, because he lived in Idaho, was when he would come into town to do the lamprey harvest. So I think going back, here's Solano Falls, and what there is today is really was flooded under the reservoir of the Dalles Dam, and what Willamette Falls it's escaped that fate, but it's not connected anymore. I mean, this is what people see when you drive by. If you drive by the falls on one side, it's just this busy highway, or on the other side, I mean, you can't even get close enough to see anything. And when I started at the beginning talking about how food represents our connection to land and how we've kind of like our modern culture has kind of separated that, like this is kind of like a microcosm. Like we've separated ourselves so much from Willamette Falls that there are lots of people that don't even know it's there. I do a lot of school presentations and public presentations for my work, and every time there are lots of people when I mention Willamette Falls that don't even know that there's a waterfall in the area. And I thought, wow, this has been the draw for thousands of years. It's what like the terminus to the Oregon Trail. That like this waterfall that brought all these people here, and then to have just forgotten about it is like this kind of travesty of the falls. And what I hope that we can, like, as we go forward, to like be able to make a site that can allow people to connect to this place. Because I mean, in tribal culture, our tribes are connected to the land. We believe we're of this land. But if you live in this place, this should be your place as well, and to behave like it is your place. And to do that is not only to protect it, restore it, but also to like make that kind of spiritual connection with your place that if you truly believe it's your home.